Amid a damp mountain pass, night vision goggles glowed red and an elite United Allied Army Special Forces company prepared to move. Drones, iron kites in the mist, swept the tree line with infrared beams, scanning for heat signatures. Below, 6 operators hefted AK-style submachine guns, their boots crunching on stones, their breaths shallow. Captain Jack led the main team, flanked by 2 fire teams securing every rise. An EOD expert and locksmith, Jack wore lightweight armor, camouflage for woodland. His eyes flicked between a wrist-mounted terrain map and the ridge ahead. Through the crackle of the secure radio, he asked, "Jack here? Ambush risk low. Proceed." No answer of fear in his calm tone. They slipped through bamboo thickets, emerging at a clearing strewn with gravel and waist-high weeds. 5 ATVs and 2 canvas tents marked the enemy's forward post. In the center, 2 wooden cabins locked with American-made padlocks, dozens of hostages waited. Jack froze, then signaled halt. 4 troopers formed a ring. Jack knelt and withdrew lockpicking cards and a handheld analyzer. 32 blue beams mapped the mechanism. 30 seconds later, a soft click sounded. He popped the lock and eased the door. Inside, fluorescent tubes revealed terror, civilians bound, fear etched on their faces. Jack slipped in. 2 soldiers followed. He motioned them to free the hostages. Just then, the night air shattered with rifle fire. A hidden sniper on higher ground had zeroed in. The first round shredded Jack's shoulder armor. He slumped, one hand pressing the wound. Sergeant Hung, his oldest friend in the ranks, dove into the line of fire, shoving Jack behind a boulder. Bullets stitched the rock as Hung cried out, "Move." Jack fumbled for a smoke grenade. As the canister hissed into the air, Hung's scream froze him. A spray of blood blossomed on Hung's tunic. Jack scrambled from cover, dragging his friend behind the hut, tearing off his own bandana to fashion a tourniquet. But Hung's eyes slipped closed, and the light died in them. "Forgive me, brother," Jack whispered, pressing a trembling hand to Hung's chest. A second grenade detonated against the tent's sternum, sparks showering the sky. Jack staggered, the world tilting. He clutched his shoulder, reeled backward, and over the edge of the cliff he went, plunging into darkness as distant echoes of gunfire faded. Jack awoke to the murmur of a forest stream and a shaft of morning sun through a canopy of ancient oaks. Pain radiated from his shoulder and ribs as he rolled onto damp grass. He tested his limbs, bruised but alive. He staggered toward the sound of water, cupped cold creek water on his face, and stared at his reflection, torn uniform, crude bandages, blood-soaked tunic. A wave of dizziness lifted him to his knees, and he blacked out again. When he next opened his eyes, a girl knelt beside him. Dressed in a floral-embroidered ethnic tunic, her twin braids framing a worried face, she extracted fresh sprigs of medicinal herbs from a satchel. "Please hold still," she murmured, crushing leaves of Daris root and applying their paste to his wounds. The pungent sting brought Jack back to consciousness. He tried to sit, wincing as she gently pressed a poultice to his shoulder. "Emily," she said when he murmured his confusion. "I found you in the ravine. You were bleeding heavily." Her care was tender, brushing hair from his forehead, warming his ice-cold body with bamboo firing techniques. When he drifted again, it was into a feverish sleep beside a flickering oil lamp. Dawn's light revealed a 12 square meters bamboo hut. Straw covered the floor. Baskets of dried herbs lined a corner, a simple low table held tea utensils and tincture vials. On a shelf lay surgical tools and a leather-bound notebook mapped with cave systems and herb sites. Emily sat by the lamp, dabbing Jack's forehead with a clean cloth. She had spent the night disinfecting wounds with betel leaf extracts, setting his fractured collarbone with bamboo splints, and dosing him with fermented turmeric tincture for pain. At 5:30 a.m., Jack's eyelids fluttered. He tried to speak but his throat was dry. His memory was a blank. "Where am I?" he rasped. "You are safe here," Emily said, relief flooding her face. She propped him up with pillows. "You fell from a cliff after an ambush. I carried you here and nursed you through the night." Jack's eyes darted around, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. He tried to recall names, images, his world had vanished. Emily fed him warm tonic, its sweetness eased his trembling. A child's giggle drew his gaze. A 10-year-old boy arrived with bamboo shoots and a golden pineapple. Emily sent him off with instructions. Jack watched them go, trust germinating in his heart. I forget everything, Jack whispered. Emily laid a hand on his arm. I'll help you remember. But you must rest. Over the next weeks, Emily guided Jack through the forest. Each dawn, they filtered creek water, foraged for medicinal plants, wild chrysanthemum, mugwort, ginger root, and Emily taught him their uses. Jack's body, though battered, learned quickly. He gathered herbs in careful bundles, repeated Latin names and tribal lore. At noon she cooked rice and greens. Sometimes she slipped in questions. Do you recall anything? He offered only fragments: red beams, gunfire, a man named Hung. Beyond that, blank. At dusk, Jack's nightmares returned. He'd bolt upright in terror, sweat soaking his shirt, murmuring grenade. Emily would hold him, whisper soothing words, "You are here. It's over." Gradually, her presence anchored him. One day she unveiled a makeshift training station in a pine clearing, rope climbs, a 1.7 meters drywall plank, a creek run with hidden eddies. Jack's soldier instincts returned, his arms burned as he clambered ropes, his feet found footholds on the wall. The cold creek shock tested his endurance. Emily coached every motion: inhale on the pull, exhale on the drop. By week's end, Jack was taller on the wall, steadier on water. In storms, he practiced shelter building and fire starting. He mastered herbal poultices under her guidance, making bombs from white paw flower and fermented dandelion. At night they sat by a campfire, swapping stories, Emily's childhood vow to heal, Jack's lost squad. In the firelight, they shared a first tentative kiss. 3 months passed. Jack walked pain-free, his shoulder scar looked like a warrior's badge. Emily planned a rebirth celebration, a low tribal cloth table laden with beautyberries and healing salves. 4 weeks since you woke, she said, eyes shining. They toasted from clay cups as dusk stained the forest gold. Jack's confidence surged. He tested himself on longer patrols with Emily, mapping new herb sites, braving boar encounters. Once, a mother boar charged. Jack yanked Emily into a crevice, shielding her. When the boar ran off, Emily's tears of gratitude sealed their bond. In evenings, they recorded an herb atlas, brewed tonics, and foraged. Nightly, they practiced a flute duet, her lullaby, his warrior tune, while crickets answered. Their love bloomed fierce in the heart of ancient woods. But Jack's past still lurked. One morning, exploring a fallen command post, scavenged spent AK casings, rusted radios, maps marked White Dragon Cave, all snapped him back. He met a gray-haired comrade, Kwang, who had survived the ambush. Kwang urged Jack to leave Emily vulnerable. That night, memories surged: Hung's sacrifice, the blast, the cliff fall. Back in the hut, Jack told Emily everything. She wept, then held him. I understand now why you kept me in the dark. He promised a final goodbye, a silent departure to finish his mission and return for her. At dawn, he slipped away, leaving only a note, asking Emily to seek safety in her village until he came back. Emily found the note and wept, alone, 3 months pregnant. At first dawn light, she packed herbs and rice, lit incense at the altar, and headed downstream to her aunt's riverside village. Emily's journey to the riverside village was both arduous and hopeful. Cradling her growing belly, she navigated the slippery mountain trail at dawn, the mist clinging to her shoulders like a shroud. Each step rattled with fatigue and anticipation. She paused only to light a single incense stick before the carved boulder that bore Jack's and her initials, a silent promise suspended between two worlds. By midday she reached the fragile footbridge spanning the jade-green river. Planks rotted at the edges, but she crossed one careful foot at a time, her heart pounding as the water roared 50 feet below. On the far bank, the village's stilt houses clustered like lotus blooms on wooden stilts. The scent of smoky roast pork and wood smoke drifted through the warm air. Her aunt, Mai, awaited her at the narrow dirt path. When Emily emerged from the forest's edge, Mai swept her into a fierce embrace. "Emily, you're safe." The older woman's eyes brimmed with tears as she guided Emily to her childhood home, a 2-room stilt house with a patched tin roof and a veranda overlooking the river. Inside, Mai's neighbors bustled with excitement. Baskets of mushrooms, handfuls of rice, and bundles of fresh greens appeared at Emily's knees. Children giggled as they offered flowers and clay cups of herbal tea. Despite Emily's day-long walk and her 6 months pregnancy, she smiled through tears. "Thank you," she whispered again and again. That afternoon, Mai settled Emily on a low bamboo cot. "You must rest," she said, tucking a soft wool blanket around her. From a wooden chest, she brought out a small bowl of millet porridge laced with sliced ginger, easy on the stomach and warming to the womb. Emily sipped slowly, the sweet steam rising like a benediction. Over the next week, the village rallied around her. Each morning, Mai's friends delivered steamed river fish and wild yam soup. The village healer, Old T, visited twice daily to apply cooling poultices of chrysanthemum and dandelion to stave off fevers. When Emily felt faint, Mai cut slices of fresh pineapple and pressed them to her lips, murmuring, "Strength comes back to those who rest." Yet despite the kindness, Emily's mind raced. She needed to know how Jack fared. At twilight, she sat on the porch swing and penned a letter in careful, swirling script. To the commanding officer, Special Forces Company. "I am Emily, wife of Captain Jack. He carried out a covert mission and has not returned. I am now expecting our child and living in my family's village for safety. Please inform me of his status and expected date of return. I await your reply. Sincerely, Emily." Tightly rolling the parchment, she entrusted it to Mai's nephew, who would ride the county courier the next morning. That night, she dreamt of Jack's face twisting in agony and heard again Hung's dying cry, memories she had thought buried. She bolted upright on the cot, clutching her belly as the moonlight painted trembling shadows across the floor. In the days that followed, Emily's routine took shape. At dawn she drank a cup of warm turmeric tea to calm morning sickness. By mid-morning she joined the village women in planting their communal rice paddy, the sun on her back nourishing more than just the grain. At midday she returned to her hut to rest. After a light soup, she boiled wild greens and roots into healing broth, storing extra in sealed gourds. Each evening she sat by the kerosene lamp, weaving tiny garments for the baby and reading by lantern light the herbal notes she had scribbled in the bamboo hut. A fortnight passed without word. Emily busied herself planting a small vegetable patch of lettuce, beans, and carrots at the foot of the veranda. She hung wind chimes made of bamboo and river shells to call away bad spirits. When a fever struck, 38.5 degrees Celsius and trembling, younger women flocked to her side with ginger compresses and mustard seed foot baths. Emily weathered it with quiet determination. "For our child," she murmured as she pressed a palm to her belly. At last, one misty dawn, the courier returned. Emily's heart thundered as she unfolded the envelope. Inside was a brief reply stamped with a unit's insignia. "Captain Jack has completed operations in the western sector and is currently on rest rotation. His squadron is expected to redeploy by the end of next month." Relief surged through Emily's chest like sunlight breaking clouds. Tears stung her eyes as she read the words aloud to Mai, whose soft clap and warm embrace felt like the world's greatest miracle. "He'll be back," Emily whispered, pressing the letter to her heart. Within days, Emily prepared for his homecoming. She repaired her aunt's roof, patching holes with palm thatch, so the hut would be sound. She washed every scrap of cloth, mixed vibrant flax dyes for their baby's gown, and rewove the faded tribal banner Jack had painted for her 4 moons ago. She placed fresh lotus blossoms in clay bowls around the porch, their fragrance inviting good fortune. Yet anticipation was tempered by caution. Reports from Mai's neighbors spoke of renewed militia patrols near the ridge. Emily prayed nightly by an altar of betel leaves and burning saffron incense, "Guide him safely. Guard him from harm." Late in the month, under a new moon sky, Emily knelt at the river's edge with her aunt. She read Jack's letter again, committing every line to memory. "When he returns, I will walk to meet him," she vowed, her reflection wavering in the water. "I will never let him leave again." Each dawn, she practiced the path back to the bamboo hut, now nearly a day's journey, imagining her reunion. She measured bundles of herbs in her pack, stocked dried provisions, and memorized every foot of trail. Though months of hardship had carved wrinkles at her eyes, hope reshaped her strength. On the eve of the redeployment deadline, Emily attended the village's mid-autumn festival. Lanterns of carved gourds floated on the river, and drums echoed through the trees. Villagers sang folk songs, and Emily joined, her voice a clear note of longing and faith. When the fire drum died at midnight, she spun under the starlight, the cool breeze whispering across her face, "He's coming." Meanwhile, Captain Jack had returned to his unit. After completing the spring sweep in the Songduk sector, he and Sergeant Kwong pressed deeper into enemy territory. Yet Jack's promise, his vow to Emily, remained a steel chain at his heart. Each night in the cramped command tent, he readied his notes, Emily's address, his own hastily written leave request, and that precious photograph of her in the lantern light beside their carved initials. One morning, Jack approached Captain Duong with measured calm. "Sir, I request short leave for urgent family matters." He produced the unit-stamped letter that Emily had sent, now forwarded by the county clinic. Duong's stern features softened as he read. With a crisp nod, he granted 3 days of leave. Jack felt the weight of both duty and love settle in his chest. He filed out of the tent, slipping on his lightweight windbreaker and glancing at the jagged map of passes and caves. He would depart at first light, traversing the ridge and cutting down through the bamboo to reach Emily's village. That night, under a canopy of bright stars, Jack crawled into his narrow cot. The lullaby Emily had hummed in the hut echoed in his mind. He whispered her name, softly, fervently, before sleep claimed him. At first light, Captain Jack slipped quietly from the forward operating base, leave orders tucked inside his breast pocket. The jungle dawn was thick with mist, the hush punctuated only by cicadas and distant bird calls. He followed the ridge path he had once scouted with Sergeant Kwong, moving swiftly yet cautiously over slippery roots and loose stones. Each step reminded him of the ambush, hung sacrifice, the cliff's edge, and then Emily's gentle face that had saved him. Mid-morning, Jack crested the last hill. Below him lay the bamboo-thatched hut where his fate had been rewritten. His heart thundered as he dropped to one knee on the dew-soaked grass, steadying himself against a rock. He pressed the photograph of Emily and the note she'd sent against his chest. "I will return. I love you." Jack paused at the hut's door, listening to the sound of Emily's morning prayers, soft incantations to the mountain spirits. He swallowed, then stepped inside. Sunlight filtered through bamboo slats, illuminating Emily bent over her herb rack, humming a lullaby to the herbs. When she sensed his presence and turned, time stood still, her eyes widened, tears pooling as she dropped her mortar and pestle. Jack crossed the room in 2 strides, sweeping Emily into his arms. She clung to him, whispering his name through sobs. Their son, 3 months old, stirred in Emily's sling and peered at his father with wide eyes. Jack knelt, gently touching the baby's cheek. "I'm home," he breathed. Over the next days, Jack and Emily rewove their life together. Jack carried in firewood and water, tested Emily's herbal poultices for fever, and helped reconstruct the hut's porch after a monsoon rain had torn away half the railing. Emily, radiant with relief, prepared turmeric rice porridge each dawn and massaged Jack's scarred shoulder with soothing balm. At night, they took turns rocking their son and watching moonlight dance on the stream outside. One clear evening, Jack led Emily to the mossy boulder beside the stream where he had first vowed to return. He held in his hand a simple iron ring he had fashioned from a spent bullet casing, engraved with J, heart emoji, E and the date of his fall. Kneeling, he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Emily, you gave me life twice, once on that battlefield, again in this hut. Will you marry me here, under the mountain spirits, and be my partner forever?" Tears streamed as Emily nodded, voice choked, "Yes. Always." They sealed their vow with a kiss as fireflies danced around them. A week later, villagers gathered at dawn for a folk medicine wedding beneath the ancient banyan. Colorful textile banners crisscrossed between trees, garlands of beautyberries and flame flowers adorned the altar of river stones. Emily wore a jade-green silk gown embroidered with dandelion petals. Jack donned a white tunic with a celestial serpent motif. The village elder intoned blessings in tribal dialect, praying for health, prosperity, and the safe return of absent loved ones. They exchanged rings and promises, through storms and mists, by sword and salve, "I will stand by you," while their son toddled between them, giggling in a miniature matching tunic. Drums and bamboo flutes heralded the ceremony's end as the couple led a procession of dancers through the village. In the months that followed, Jack and Emily transformed the hut into a community clinic. They erected a lean-to annex for treatments, hung a carved wooden sign, Mountain Field Medicine Station, and stocked shelves with tinctures, salves, and surgical kits. Emily taught villagers the basics of antiseptic dressings and herbal compresses. Jack trained ex-soldiers in emergency field triage and mine-clearing safety. Villagers and veterans alike arrived with wounds old and new, a hunter's arrow lodged in soft tissue, school children with febrile infections, elders weakened by arthritis. Together, Jack and Emily treated them, blending modern trauma protocols with traditional folk remedies. Their son, named Jacob by the elders, played among herb baskets, his laughter a daily reminder of life's renewal. As rain and drought cycles waxed and waned, Jack and Emily found rhythm in their work, sunrise foraging for ginseng and chrysanthemum, midday surgeries under thatch-shaded light, evening consultations by lamplight. They recorded every case in Emily's leather-bound mountain herb atlas and Jack's field logs, soon shared with the regional medical authority. Under their care, the station became a beacon. When forest fires threatened nearby valleys, Jack organized controlled burns and evacuation drills. Emily distributed smoke-soothing ointments to villagers. Their collaboration welded soldierly discipline with healer's compassion. On the first anniversary of Jack's return, they planted a pine sapling beside the clinic, our family tree, Jack called it. They held a small festival, with tribal drums and bamboo songbirds carved by local artisans. Jacob, now toddling by Emily's side, plucked a feather from a cast iron wind chime and giggled. That night, as stars ignited the sky, Jack and Emily sat on the clinic's porch, arms entwined. Jack fingered the iron ring on Emily's hand and said, "Whatever challenges lie ahead, missions, monsoons, or miseries, I will return to you." Emily rested her head on his shoulder, smiling through tears, "And I will wait, always." 2 summers after their wedding, little Jacob, now 2 years old, bounded through the bamboo groves of the Mountain Field Medicine Station, his laughter echoing like bells. Under Emily's watchful eye, he learned to identify chrysanthemum blooms and mugwort fronds, plucking petals with curious fingers. Jack built him a miniature foraging basket, and together they collected bundles of green ginger for tincture. At mealtimes, Jacob sat on Emily's lap, spooning spoonfuls of turmeric rice porridge between enthusiastic giggles. As he toddled along narrow forest paths, clutching his parents' hands, the station's timber walls and rustling canopy became his playground, a place where medicine, love, and adventure entwined. The successes of the little clinic soon outgrew its thatched walls. With villagers' help, Jack and Emily erected a sturdy timber annex, one room for triage and dressing wounds, another for patient recovery. They installed glass jars of dried roots and galleries of hand-drawn herb charts on bamboo walls. Emily trained a handful of local volunteers, young women and elders alike, in poultice preparation and steam inhalation techniques. Jack ran weekly field med drills for former soldiers turned clinic aides, teaching them how to carry stretchers, improvise splints, and navigate rain-slick ravines to reach remote hamlets. Word spread through mountain hamlets, here was a place of true healing, where scalpels and salves worked hand in hand. When monsoon rains burst the swollen riverbanks one August, the footbridge linking the clinic to the village was swept away in a roar of red water. Villagers, farmers, teachers, carpenters, gathered on both banks, dread in their eyes. Jack donned his laced rubber boots and coordinated a makeshift raft of bamboo poles, while Emily organized first aid on the high ground. For 3 days, they ferried patients across, treating fevered children, lancing abscesses, suturing lacerations from debris, and soothing hypothermic elders with hot ginger mint broth. By dawn of the 4th day, teams of villagers, guided by Jack's climbing ropes and pulleys, had reconstructed a plank bridge strong enough for stretchers. Though exhausted, the community's gratitude shone brighter than any sunshine breaking through the clouds. The next trial arrived on silent wings, a spike in malaria among paddy field workers. Emily recognized the signs: chill sweats, delirium, enlarged spleens, and brewed high-potency decoctions of sweet wormwood and feverfew flowers. Jack coordinated mass distribution of mosquito net treatments, citronella oil, fumigant coils, and fumigation of low-lying huts. They held nightly mosquito school gatherings under lantern light, teaching families to eliminate standing water and repair window screens. Over 6 weeks, clinic census shifted from dozens of malaria cases to only sporadic fevers, and by harvest time the fields hummed with life once more. As villagers danced at the mid-autumn threshing festival, they sang praise for the soldier doctor and the herbalist whose compassion had kept them alive. Recognizing that many smaller hamlets lay days beyond safe roads, Jack and Emily mounted quarterly medicine treks. Riding pack mules laden with bandages, tinctures, and portable splints, they traversed narrow ridges and bamboo tunnels to clinics carved into granite caves. In one valley, they treated an outbreak of dysentery with rice water gruel and charcoal poultices. In another, they set fractures from wood splinter accidents and fitted indigenous cane crutches. Each evening, they led villagers in springwater wound care demonstrations by torchlight, leaving behind supply caches and training manuals written in both tribal script and the national language. Their mule train returned lighter but hearts heavier, knowing that every patient helped was a promise of renewed strength for the mountains they called home. One dry season, a lightning strike ignited dead pine needles on a steep slope. A crackling wall of flame roared downhill toward a hamlet of elderly foragers. Jack sounded the emergency horn, 3 long blasts, and raced ahead with a volunteer crew to construct firebreak trenches. Emily guided terrified villagers to damp riverbanks while splashing buckets of water in rhythmic lines to halt the blaze. Over 10 harrowing hours, sweat and smoke stung every eye, but when dawn glimmered on scorched ferns, the flames had been contained. Injured firefighters received Emily's cooling poultices. Jack arranged for replacement blankets and clean water. The shared danger forged an unbreakable bond between the clinic, the mountain people, and the land saved from ruin. As autumn's golden needles drifted down, the station held its annual harvest festival. Tables groaned under baskets of chestnuts, lotus root, and jars of healing vinegars. Villagers performed tribal dances around the pine sapling Jack and Emily had planted on their first anniversary. Children chased lanterns shaped like glowing fireflies, and Jacob, now a spirited 3-year-old, danced with Emily's woven scarf trailing behind him. At twilight, Jack took Emily's hand by the sapling's tender trunk and whispered, "No matter where our duties call us, through storms or missions, I will return to you." Beneath the swaying branches, Emily smiled through tears, "And I will wait with open arms, forever your partner." Yet even in this sanctuary, Jack's soldierly instincts and oath to protect could not rest forever. One crisp winter morning, an urgent dispatch arrived. An isolated border clinic, cut off by landslides, needed immediate medical reinforcement to stem a cholera outbreak. Captain Duong's order was clear: Jack must lead a rapid response team beyond the high passes at first light. Emily read the message, her hand resting on her husband's. "You must go," she said with steady resolve, "but promise me you'll come back." Jack pressed his forehead to hers. "I promise. 3 weeks, no more." They embraced, knowing his departure would test the sanctuary they had built. In the days before he left, Jack and Emily worked side by side. He drilled the clinic staff in emergency water purification techniques, she reviewed herbal protocols for cholera treatment and arranged extra supply caches. They updated Jacob's leather explorer's satchel with a compass and a small tin of dandelion tea. "For when he misses me," Jack winked. At sunset on the eve of his departure, they stood at the stream's edge, arms entwined. "Go be the soldier you've always been," Emily whispered. "And come home soon." Jack dipped her hand in the cool water, drew a finger across her palm in the shape of an infinity sign, and said, "Always." Before dawn, Jack loaded his rations and medical pack onto the mule team. Kwang and 2 combat medics stood ready. A hush fell over the bamboo corral as Jack slid an iron-cased whistle around Emily's neck, a call for rescue if ever she needed it. Jacob tugged at Jack's pant leg, his small face solemn as his father knelt to meet his eyes. "Be brave, little one. I'll be back to play in the forest again." Emily kissed Jack's cheek, fighting tears. Then, with a final look at the timber clinic and the pine sapling swaying in the moonlight, Jack hoisted his pack and strode into the mist-swathed trail, duty once more beckoning him beyond the mountains they called home. Before dawn's gray light had faded, Jack led his small medic contingent up the battered trail toward the high-altitude border clinic. The cholera outbreak there had claimed dozens in days, and the narrow valley roads were slick with melting snow. On his sturdy mule, Jacob's little satchel of dandelion tea and Emily's written instructions for rice water gruel rode in Jack's pack. Sergeant Kwang carried stretchers, 2 combat medics carried 4 kits and oral rehydration sachets. As they climbed, Jack's thoughts drifted to Emily and their son, how Emily had strengthened the villagers in his absence, and how Jacob, no longer a toddler but a spirited helper, had waved him off with steady confidence. The remote clinic sat half buried in snowdrifts, its tin roof bowed, its glass pane windows cracked. Inside, lines of pale villagers waited on straw mats, eyes hollow with fever. Jack and his team worked in tandem, Emily's herbal protocols paired with Jack's sterile dressings. He set up field 4 points while medics dosed patients with doxycycline. Outside, Sergeant Kwong oversaw cordoning off water supplies. They boiled and chlorinated every bucket before it reached the jerry cans. By nightfall, the stream ran clear, and the clinic's census fell by half. Every evening, Jack retreated to the command tent and wrote to Emily. His letters, carefully folded, ink smudged by mountain damp, described each day's victories and trials. Today I saw a mother clutch her fevered child, sobbing when we saved him. I carried your pouch of dandelion tea for that child, and I swear your presence. He sealed each with a pressed fern from the valley floor and entrusted them to the medic runners bound for the Riverside post office. In return, he received Emily's slim notes, tales of Jacob's new words. He could now count to 10 in tribal dialect, sketches of the clinic's solar cooker, and reassurances that she used the iron whistle to call for aid at the first sign of trouble. A fierce blizzard ripped through the valley on the third night. Wind howled like a wounded beast, burying tents in snow and cutting communications. Power lines snapped, and the generator hiccuped out, plunging the clinic into darkness. Jack lit emergency candles and bark stave torches. To keep hypothermic patients alive, he and Kwong formed a human blanket chain, passing patients into heated huts. One runner fell gravely ill, but Emily's protocols for hot ginger lemongrass broth, carried by pack mule, restored his strength. By dawn, the storm had spent itself, and though frost rimed every window, not one patient had been lost. Back at the Mountain Field Medicine Station, Emily found ways to channel Jacob's boundless energy. Now 3.5, he helped her sort cinnamon bark in tag vials. She taught him simple chants to calm crying children during inoculations, a rhythmic hoo-hoo-ha that Jacob repeated with gleeful gusto. When a delegation of mountain elders visited for winter tonic treatments, Jacob marched beside Emily, handing out steamed sweet potatoes, his proud grin softening the stoic faces of grandmothers. 2 weeks into Jack's mission, the Riverside village celebrated its annual Festival of Lights. Emily oversaw the lantern making, carved gourds inlaid with beeswax candles, painted with dragonflies and lotus petals. She organized music, flutes and drums, to accompany the procession of children, Jacob leading the way with his gourd lantern held high. Amid the flickering glow, Emily felt Jack's presence beside her, a heartbeat in the rhythm of drums. She raised a cup of simberry wine to the night sky. For your safe return, she whispered. By the third week, the cholera outbreak had abated. Patients no longer collapsed in the wards, and the waterborne bacteria retreated under Jack's and his team's unrelenting vigilance. On the eve of his leave's expiration, the border clinic's commanding officer presented Jack with a field commendation, an engraved metal plate bearing the company insignia, for extraordinary service in saving mountain lives. Jack dipped his head before the assembled villagers and soldiers, then penned one last report: mission accomplished. Returning to family. With mission orders complete, Jack and his team retraced the ridge path under a cold sun. The high passes glimmered with ice, avalanches had swept old pine boughs into the ravine. Jack paused at the edge of White Dragon Cave, once a forward observation post, remembering Hung's sacrifice and the day he'd lost his memory. He knelt, closed his eyes, and pressed a silent thanks to his fallen friend. Then, with renewed resolve, he descended into the mist-filled forest that led him home. Late afternoon found Jack ascending the familiar trail through bamboo thickets. He paused at a bend where the stream's babble first greeted him 4 months ago. There stood Emily, in a deep blue tribal blouse, knitting a miniature wool tunic for Jacob. At her side, Jacob tumbled stones into the water, calling out, "Papa! Papa!" When Emily's head lifted and their eyes met, the years of hardship vanished. Jack dropped his pack and lifted his arms. Jacob ran into his father's embrace, and Emily stood, tears of joy shining on her cheeks, as Jack swept them both into a fierce embrace. Under a sky painted with sunset's crimson, Jack carried Jacob to the hut's threshold while Emily placed a bowl of warm herbal broth on the table. Inside, the little clinic's walls were lined with new charts, cholera protocols, mosquito net designs, avalanche rescue procedures, Emily's and Jack's living legacy. That night, as they sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a shared blanket, Jack whispered, "No matter how far duty calls me, through whiteouts or wars, I will always return to you." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder, Jacob between them asleep on her lap, and she answered, "And I will be here, our home waiting, for as long as it takes."